box making and
National
That's what we were just talking about, was the blitzes. And they talked about them yesterday, and I got so hungry. I love blitzes. That's how it goes.
No, she made her own blitzes. And all
California has
California's okay. The real estate community is in a crisis right now. The banking crisis earlier this year kind of made some but even
Yeah, do we want to do Korea?
major insurance companies are not.
We're going to start the trio, so why don't you go ahead and get situated, everyone, and I'll get...
We'll just sort of gather in a circle right here.
I think we're out.
Whatever you want. It's considered a little bit of a poo-poo-poo, like God forbid you put it on the but you should absolutely come. But you should come be a part of this circle. You should all. Your close people should be here. Yeah. Where? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This tear and this so what I'd ask is, when you're ready, you're just sort of from the bottom, split it in half, if that makes sense. So we say Baruch on top, Adonai, Eloheinu, Melech, Ha'olam, Yayan. So there's this sorts of goodness in this world that He's given, and us taking. Left to us to carry your mom's legacy on. So if you're ready. Ready? When someone lives past 100, and not only lives past 100, but fills those 100 years with every ounce of life you can fill it with, sometimes it feels unreal to imagine that they can be gone. I'm talking last night about memories, and even talking a moment ago, there was some discussion that maybe the reason that Judy isn't here is she is watching MSNBC on high right now. So we say goodbye, and we celebrate someone who had not just one life, in so many ways reinvented herself and found so many different ways of having life, of feeling life, of making life throughout these 100+ years. And yet we come together to say goodbye. We come together to acknowledge that even Queenie is gone. Even Judy is gone. So we begin by saying, I'd ask everyone to repeat after me, Baruch Dayan Ha'emet. Blessed is the judge of truth. We say, Adonai Natan, Adonai Lekach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevarach. The Holy One gave an incredible, fierce life to an incredible, fierce lady. And the Holy One has taken her away. And so we begin by saying goodbye with these same words that our people have said goodbye with for thousands of years, these ancient words of Psalms. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo echzar. Adonai is my shepherd, we shall not want. We take moments to lie down, to sit with the people we love in these green pastures and these sunny days. We sit in the stillness, surrounded by community, even during loss. We find that even when we think it's not possible, our souls can still be restored, and we can still find new paths in life. And though we walk with the shadow of loss and of death, we will find comfort in each other. We will prepare tables for each other and for our mourners. We will make sure that they know that they are not alone, that they walk this path of loss and grief with community, whether here in St. Louis or all the way over in California. And surely there will be more moments of goodness and mercy to be found. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo echzar. Bihinot Eshaya bitzeni, al mei menuchot yenachaleni. Nafshi shove, nafshi shove, yarcheni. Lemahad letzedek, lemahad shemo. Thousands of years ago, our tradition said these words, that there is a season for everything, a time for every experience, a time for planting and reaping, for keeping and for discarding. And I hear she liked to keep those things. So they may need help with discarding. A time for loving and a time for hating. A time for embracing and a time for pausing. A time for healing and laughing and weeping. A time for dancing with the highest of fashions, is what I hear. And a time for wailing. A time for birthing 100 years ago. And a time for dying. A time for speaking. A time for silence. A time for seeking. And a time for losing. We're going to share some words about her life, about Judy's life, about Queenie's life, as she was called. That's a name from Keith, right? Gave her that name. But also the family wanted to make sure that if there was anyone here who had words that you wanted to say, that you should feel comfortable coming forward and speaking those words. But they'll also be there for Shiva the next 2 nights? The next 2 nights. So certainly they will be there to laugh and to cry and to reminisce and to share stories of blintzas and cable news and
locks.
locks. Yeah, I'm focused on the blintzas.
She made the locks herself. Took 3 days.
Kinahora. Okay. So she grew up in it, right? They say that in New York, the lox and the bagels come out of the faucets. And it's where she grew up. She grew up with that kind of Jewish world and that kind of Jewish life. But she didn't just stay in the city. I loved this story. She and her family had a hotel, like a resort hotel in upper state New York. They would smuggle in liquor during Prohibition. And the whole family lived in this hotel together. They grew up together, they laughed together. Can you imagine the family arguments that must have happened in that hotel? And the amazing memories that must have happened in that hotel. But as she got older, there weren't enough singles. It wasn't a place to grow up. Everyone young around her was related to her. So they moved to New Jersey for high school. And eventually she headed off to Brooklyn for secretarial school, skills that she didn't know it at the time, but would be there waiting when she reinvented herself for that next chapter. She always carried the legacy of family with her, and so she moved with her family to St. Louis, where she met your dad. Introduced by cousins just after the war, they had the two of you, and they raised the two of you, and that next chapter of her life looked a lot like that traditional 1950s housewife. She was involved in raising you. She was involved in the PTA and B'nai B'rith and B'nai Amunah and all of the other B'nays in town. She made sure that your home was the home that all the friends came home to. I know you said that after a long night, maybe you were a little older at this point, but after a long night at Balaban's, it was the Gerber. I see nodding of some people who maybe have vague memories of these nights. It was the Gerber home that you would come back to. And so this was her. She made that her home until once again she was ready to reinvent herself and to figure out what that next chapter would be, particularly after her father was murdered in a terrible tragedy in the early 70s. She knew she needed to figure out what more there was in life. She was always so smart and so engaged and organized and always had a fashion eye, and evidently her red nails were... But they said you never wanted one of those nails pointed at you. That was... I love just looking around and seeing all these friends. You can tell people, so many folks knew and loved her. And so she reinvented herself, and she went to work at Neiman Marcus, where she starts on the floor and eventually kind of became the manager of everything. Which I think was maybe a pattern in her life. 30 years ago, a lifetime ago, she lost her husband. She lost your dad. And she leaned into her independence. She leaned into finding life and joy where she could. And taking care of herself and being independent was so important and so sustaining for her. Living alone until she was just a few months ago. Still driving into her 90s. Still taking care of herself. She never met a stranger. Whether it was at the Gatesworth, whether it was in a elevator going down, she had a friend by the time it reached the bottom floor. I heard all sorts of stories about airplane rides where she could tell you their whole biography after she landed. But you can see just looking around how important friendship was to her and how she made friends with all sorts of folks, and particularly younger folks. She loved having these younger friends. The two of you, your friends, became her friends. And I guess when you hit 100, it's kind of hard not to have most of your friends be younger than you. But y'all told stories about how even just 6 months ago, 8 months ago, there was someone downstairs in her building, someone in his 50s, that she was making soup for as he recovered from a hip surgery. She was a force. Everything she did, she was a force. She loved her family and her grandchildren and her children and her friends. She loved good food. We've talked about the blintzes and locks, but we can keep talking about the blintzes and locks. She loved bridge. She loved to read. And she loved politics. I see lots of nods there too. And loved talking about politics and letting you know about politics. She loved sweets. And even a few weeks ago, even in her last weeks, you'd come and you'd visit and she'd look at you and she'd say, "Where's my cookie?" May we all live a life like hers. May we all live a life filled with family and with love and with new experiences and with reinventing ourselves. May we make her memory a blessing by finding those next chapters in our own lives, finding the joy where it is possible, and being there to support each other when it is not. May your memory, may your mom's memory, may your friend's memory, may Judy's memory, may Queenie's memory be a blessing in all of our lives. And we say, Amen. Is there anyone who'd like to share some words here? Feel no pressure and
Somebody go ahead. No.
I think Barry will.
Yeah.
Well, last week,
I'm just going to bring you a microphone so folks can hear you.
last week it was probably the last day that she was really alive and looking around. I fed her lunch,
That was on Sunday.
and while I was feeding her the soup, she pointed over and said, "Cookies." There was a box of brand new cookies that somebody had brought her. I mean, that was probably the last day that she was really all together. And after she had what lunch I could get into her, she didn't have her pants on, so I had to turn around. Nurse had to come in and put her pants on so that we could put her in the bed. And that the bed was the last time that I remember that she really showed that she was in pain. I'm sorry. And I'm late to this group. I've only done her less than a year, but she won my heart.
Can you hear me okay? I'll tell a little story that you'll know where I'm going once you get through the story. But I think I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Is sometimes we have people in our lives that aren't available to us the way we think or expect or maybe should or could. And that was kind of the case with it was the case in my own experience. So in 1950, Judy and Al lived across, I think in the apartment across from where my parents lived, 6632 Washington, right behind B'nai Amunah and in the Loop area. And I mean, the first thing that Elaine said to me today is that Judy had always thought of me as another son. And later in years, I think it was right after she couldn't drive anymore, so I became the driver for the Trader Joe's and Whole Foods and all that sort of stuff, and library, and pick up the medications and all that sort of stuff. And then I found out that she had always thought of me as someone very close to her, and this was later obviously in both of our lives, but for me, she was my mom. And we had some discussions that I wished I would have had with my own mother decades ago. And she was available. And we could just talk like two human beings, honestly and genuinely, about what was going on. And in Judy's case, it was mostly about somebody named Trump. And it was, you know, but anyway, that was,
She had that conversation with him.
yeah, every conversation had something to that effect. But anyway, the mark what she left for me was authenticism and being genuine to your own soul and who you are and who God intended you to be. And that's quite an accomplishment. She didn't need to be anything else or anyone else or be anything to anyone else. Anyway.
Any other voices? Again, there are the opportunities at Shiva too. And hopefully we'll all be telling stories long after that as well.
One more thing.
Yeah.
Last holiday, Christmas time, the condo group had like a little social thing. And Adrian and I were afraid to take her there because she was having trouble with, legs were swollen and she was walking, and we made it to the floor where her apartment, where her condo had been. And all the people from the building were there. And she left us sitting and worked the room.
Without her walker.
Without her walker. Went from group to group, people to people.
And to the food.
And
With
to
no
the food.
walker.
And we were like, but she knew every single one, she knew every single name, and she knew every single story from every family. Just a trip.
Amazing. What a life.
And she was 99 at that Christmas.
So, we begin to say goodbye. We begin to say goodbye even as, gosh, it feels like you can feel her presence here, doesn't it? In this space with these people. So we'd ask that if you're able, as you're able, that everyone please rise as we say these ancient words. Exalted, compassionate oneness of the universe, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure and the fierce. The soul of Judith has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that she find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bonds of life, and may she rest in peace. Let us say, Amen. El mele rachamim, shochen bamromi, hamse menucha nechona, tachat kanfei hashchina, b'ma'alot kedoshim etorim, kizora ki amazhirim. El nishma Yudit bat Baruch Shalacha li'olama began eden tehei menuchata Ana ba'al rachamim hastireha b'seter kenafecha li'olami Utzro b'tzor chayim nishmata Adonai hu nachata ותנוח בשלום על משכבה, ונאמר אמן. So as we begin to lower Judy, Queenie's body into the earth, we'll have a moment for those who would like to participate, to help make sure that she is buried by hands that loved her and hands that love her family. And so we'll give the family the first opportunity to participate in the burial, this final mitzvah. And then we will open it up to other folks. Depending on how many people want to participate, we may pause and say Mourner's Kaddish so that the family doesn't have to be here the whole time, and then open that opportunity up to anyone again after that. Lekomata bo v'shalom. May Judy go on to the Holy One in peace. Shir lemahalo Sainai le'ari Yayan yavo ezri Ezri mehi madona Se shamayim ba'aretz אל יתן לעמוד רגלך, אל ינום שומרך. הנה לא ינום ולא יישן, שומר ישראל. אדוני שומרך, אדוני צילך. על יד ימינך יומם השמש לא יככה וירח בלילה אדוני ישמוך מכל רע ישמור את נפשך אדוני ישמור צאתך ובואך מעתה ועד עולם מעתה ועד עולם. For those who are wanting to participate and feel comfortable walking around to the other side, you absolutely can go form a second line over there.
Oh, go ahead.
Jim, you got a good one.
moment once everyone has had an opportunity to participate.
Not mine.
My mom and dad. My mom and Judith.
Here, I did.
So for the first time, we come together to say these words of Mourner's Kaddish. Words that don't mention death, but affirm life. And how we make sure that your mom, your friend, your grandma's memory is a blessing through the way that we live in this world. So I ask that everyone, as you are able, please rise for these ancient words. Yitgadal, Yitgadash, Shemei Rava, Belma, Didrach, Chute, Yamlich Malchute, B'chayechon, Uvyomechon, Uvchaye, Dechol Beit Yisrael, B'agala, Uvizman Kariv, Imru, Amen. Yehe Shmei Rava, Muvorach, Le'olam, Ulamei, Almaya, Yitbarach, Yishtabach, Yitpa'ar, Yitromam, Yitnaseh, Yitadar, Yitalel, Yitalal, Shemei, Tukudisha, Barichu, Le'ela, Minko, Birchata, Bashirata, Tushbechata, Venechamata, Damiram, Be'alma, Bimru, Amen. Yehe Shlama Rava Min Shemaya, B'chaim Aleinu, Be'al Yisrael, Bimru, Amen. Say Shalom B'mrama, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu Be'al Yisrael, Bimru. Say Shalom B'mroma, Uya say Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Ve'imru, Imru, Amen. Zichronah Livracha, may Queenie, may Judy, may Yehudit, may your mom and your grandma and your friend, may her memory be a blessing, and we all say, Amen. I would ask that everyone who's not the direct family, if you could form sort of two lines facing each other that all the mourners could walk through as they begin to leave the center.
We'll go right through this walkway.
How about a minute?
Can ask them to start. Can we start on the stage?
Yeah.
This covered. Can we get that moving so that you
Yeah,
can, like,
definitely.
quickly-
No problem.
So we have you all walk between your family and your friends, as you remember that you don't go on this walk alone. That you do this in company, you do this in community, and you do grief step by step by step.
We'll have them come over if when I walk, go through it and come back.
Makom Yenechem Etchem B'Tochshai V'Nei Tzion V'Yerushalayim. May we all find comfort as we have found and struggled for comfort for time immemorial. And next time we gather, may it be for happy occasions. May it be for Simchas.